History isn't only in textbooks. It walks silently in our streets, in our stores, in the fleeting glances of strangers. One ordinary Tuesday in 1983, Martha Henderson unknowingly intersected with that history. And today, in your city, perhaps right now, something equally subtle is unfolding, waiting for someone to notice. So pause, observe, comment your city below. Let's see who is paying attention, who notices the patterns, who is awake in a world that often moves blindly. Remember, sometimes the smallest observation can ripple across time in ways you will never fully understand, just like that fateful Walmart aisle in Alexandria. September 18th, 1983, began like thousands of other mornings in Alexandria, Virginia. The air was already heavy with late summer humidity when the automatic doors of the new Walmart on Richmond Highway slid open for the first time that day. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed softly. Shopping carts rattled. A cashier laughed at something someone said 2 lanes over. Nothing about the scene suggested history was about to shift. Harold Jennings stood just inside the entrance, hands folded neatly in front of his blue vest, greeting customers as they passed. He was 72 years old, thin but upright, his posture still carrying the discipline of decades of routine. He smiled easily, the kind of smile that didn't demand anything in return. "Good morning," he said again and again. Harold had taken the greeter job 6 months earlier. Not for the money. His postal pension covered the basics. But because the house on Bogard Street had become unbearably quiet after his wife died the previous winter. Ellen had been gone just 7 months, but the absence still felt physical. Her coffee mug remained on the counter. Her reading glasses still rested beside the couch. At night, Harold sometimes caught himself listening for the sound of her humming in the kitchen before remembering there would be no sound at all. The job gave him noise. Faces. Small exchanges that broke the silence. He had spent 38 years working for the Postal Service, most of it inside sorting rooms where speed depended on memory. Harold had learned early that patterns mattered. Addresses, routes, names that appeared when they shouldn't, or didn't appear when they should have. He never thought of it as a skill. It was simply how his mind worked. By the time Walmart opened that summer, Harold already knew many of the regulars. The Ramirez family came every Saturday. Mr. Chen always shopped late Thursday mornings. College students appeared in clusters near the end of August, buying cheap food and notebooks. On the morning of September 18th, one man stood out, not because he looked strange, but because he looked too normal. Mid-40s, average height, thinning brown hair, wire-rimmed glasses, khaki pants, and a light blue button-down shirt. The uniform of half the men in Northern Virginia. The man nodded politely when Harold greeted him and passed through the entrance without breaking stride. His accent, if there was one, was faint, almost unplaceable. Harold noticed him only because something in his mind clicked quietly. He had seen this man before. Not often, not frequently enough to register consciously, but enough that Harold's instinct stirred. The man moved with purpose, not browsing, not wandering. He carried a small basket instead of cart. Harold watched as the man disappeared down one of the center aisles. He did not follow him. He did not stare. He simply remembered. A few minutes later, the man passed through the checkout lanes. His purchases were unremarkable at first glance. Duct tape, a pack of manila envelopes, a bottle of rubbing alcohol, and a folded newspaper. The cashier rang him up. The receipt printed. The man paid in cash. As he left, he glanced once toward the entrance, not directly at Harold, but past him as if checking something beyond the doors. Harold returned the nod. Nothing happened, and that should have been the end of it. But as the automatic doors closed behind the man, Harold felt the same sensation he had felt dozens of times during his years at the post office. The quiet awareness that something small had just broken a pattern he couldn't yet fully see. At the time, he didn't know why it mattered, only that it did. Harold Jennings saw the man again 6 days later. It was Monday, September 24th, just after 10 in the morning. The store was moderately busy. Retirees moving slowly through aisles, a few young parents with restless children, the steady rhythm of carts, and checkout beeps filling the space. The man entered at 10:18 a.m. Harold noted the time without meaning to. Old habits surfaced automatically. The man wore different clothes this time. A gray sweater instead of the blue shirt, but everything else was the same. The posture, the pace, the small shopping basket held in his left hand. He nodded once as he passed Harold, his expression neutral. "Morning," Harold said. The man replied, "Morning," and continued inside. Harold did not watch him closely. He had learned long ago that obvious attention invited mistakes. Instead, he focused on his work, greeting customers, helping a woman locate the pharmacy aisle, steadying a cart for an elderly man whose hands trembled. But he listened. 20 minutes later, the man reappeared near the checkout lanes. The items were identical. Duct tape, manila envelopes, rubbing alcohol, one newspaper, cash again. Harold felt the faint tightening in his chest that came when patterns aligned too cleanly. Postal work had taught him that repetition wasn't strange by itself. People had routines, but precision was another matter. 6 days. Same window of time. Same items. He filed it away and let it go. The third time came the following Sunday. 10:22 a.m. Same basket. Same purchases. That was when Harold stopped thinking of the man as a customer and began thinking of him as a sequence. In the mailroom, sequences mattered. They told you when fraud was happening, when identities overlapped, when something moved through a system in a way it wasn't supposed to. Harold did not jump to conclusions. He had lived too long to do that. But he began counting. By the fourth visit, he knew the rhythm without checking a clock. By the fifth, he could feel the timing in his bones. And then on the fifth visit, something changed. The man paid for his items as usual, but instead of exiting, he turned toward the small snack bar near the front of the store. Walmart had added it as a convenience. Cheap coffee, hot dogs, plastic tables bolted to the floor. The man ordered coffee. Black. He sat alone, unfolded the newspaper, and began to read. Harold continued working, but his attention sharpened. He noticed how the man positioned himself, facing the entrance back to the wall. He noticed how the newspaper stayed folded at a precise angle. 16 minutes passed, then 17. The man folded the newspaper carefully, creasing it lengthwise. He stood, left the coffee half full, and placed the paper flat on the table. He walked out without looking back. 8 minutes later, another man entered. This one was younger, athletic, dressed in running clothes, sweat still darkening the fabric around his collar. He did not pause at the entrance, did not greet Harold, did not slow. He walked straight to the snack bar. He picked up the newspaper. He left. No purchase, no hesitation. 3 minutes, start to finish. Harold felt something cold settle in his stomach. In 38 years of sorting mail, he had seen this before. Not the details, but the structure. Two actions that only made sense when placed together. A transfer without contact. Timing precise enough to avoid randomness. That night, Harold sat alone in his living room, the television casting pale light across the walls Ellen had once decorated. The news was full of tension. The Korean airliner shot down weeks earlier, rhetoric hardening on both sides. Words like retaliation and escalation spoken too casually. As he watched, Harold thought about the folded newspaper, the empty coffee cup, the runner who never shopped. He asked himself the question he had learned to ask long ago. If this were mail, would I flag it? The answer came without hesitation. Yes. And that answer disturbed him more than he was willing to admit. Harold did not report anything after the fifth visit. Not yet. That restraint mattered. In his working years at the post office, Harold had learned that premature action ruined good observations. If you flagged every irregularity, you drowned supervisors in noise. Patterns only meant something once they settled. So he waited, and he watched. The sixth visit came right on schedule. Saturday, September 30th, 10:21 a.m. The man, customer 47, as Harold had begun calling him privately, wore a brown jacket this time, the kind sold at Sears, deliberately unremarkable. His hair was combed slightly differently, but not enough to disguise him from someone who remembered faces the way Harold did. Same nod, same faint, unplaceable accent, same basket, Harold noticed something new almost immediately. Customer 47 glanced at the reflection in the glass doors as he entered. Not long, not obvious, just enough to confirm who was behind him. The movement was practiced, subtle, something Harold had seen in nervous people and trained ones alike. Inside, the purchases changed. Still the duct tape. Still the envelopes. Still the newspaper. But now there were batteries. AA, pack of 4. That small deviation tightened the knot in Harold's chest. Changes within a pattern were never random. Customer 47 paid, moved to the snack bar, ordered coffee, and sat in the same chair. This time he stayed 15 minutes, not 17. Harold timed it unconsciously, counting breaths the way he once counted mail bundles. When customer 47 left, Harold noticed his hands. They were steady, too steady. The second man arrived 9 minutes later, not 8. Running clothes again. Different brand of shoes. Same posture. Same direct path. Same newspaper pickup. As the runner exited, his eyes flicked briefly toward Harold. Just once. That look followed Harold home. He tried to distract himself with dinner, but the microwave hummed louder than usual in the empty kitchen. Ellen's absence pressed in on him. Her voice, her habit of asking small questions about his day, her gentle insistence that he trust himself. You always notice things, she used to say. That's not an accident. Harold slept poorly. By the 7th visit, he was certain. This was no hobby. No coincidence. No harmless routine. He had seen enough variation within consistency to know this was control behavior. Someone was adjusting timing. Someone was communicating without speaking. And someone was trusting that no one would care. The weight of that realization sat heavily on him, because watching was no longer enough. Reporting meant consequences for him, for them, for people he would never meet. He imagined himself sitting across from federal agents, trying to explain why duct tape and newspapers felt dangerous. He imagined being dismissed, humored, forgotten. Worse, he imagined being right. The Cold War had always felt distant, fought in briefings and borders far from Bogart Street. But now it had followed him into a Walmart snack bar, into the quiet space where coffee went cold and papers changed hands. On the morning of September 14th, Harold put on his jacket, picked up his car keys, and did something he had never done in 72 years of careful living. He did not go to work. He drove north toward Washington, toward a building where patterns became cases, toward a door he hoped would open. The Federal Bureau of Investigation building did not look like the place where ordinary concerns belonged. It was gray, functional, intentionally uninviting. Harold parked his Buick 3 blocks away, partly because he had missed the turn, partly because he needed the walk. His hands were unsteady as he straightened his jacket and checked that his wallet was in his pocket. Old habits, small anchors. Inside, the lobby moved at a different tempo than the Walmart entrance. No greetings, no smiles, just motion. People passed with folders tucked under arms, voices low, expressions already somewhere else. Harold felt instantly out of place, like he had stepped into a machine that did not notice loose parts. The receptionist asked him why he was there. Her tone was polite, practiced. Suspicious activity, Harold said. She asked if he'd witnessed a crime. No. Threatened? No. Then what exactly? That question, exactly, nearly ended it. Harold hesitated, searching for language that did not sound foolish. He spoke slowly, carefully, describing the schedule, the purchases, the newspaper, the second man. As he talked, he watched her expression flatten. Not disbelief. Something worse. Routine dismissal. She asked him to take a seat. 2 hours passed. Harold watched the clock, watched agents come and go, and felt his certainty drain away. Perhaps this was nothing. Perhaps grief had sharpened his imagination too far. He stood once, meaning to leave, when a man in a rumpled suit appeared and called his name. Special Agent David Russo. Mid-30s. Tired eyes. Alert posture. The interview room was small, undecorated, and quietly intimidating. A tape recorder sat between them, and used. Russo listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding, occasionally asking for clarification. Dates, times, sequences. Harold answered without notes. When he finished, The room stayed quiet. Then Russo said something that changed everything. "That's a dead drop." The words landed heavily. Russo explained without drama. "Public locations. No direct contact. Objects passed without being acknowledged. Predictable schedules adjusted slightly to avoid detection. The duct tape, envelopes, alcohol, tools for document handling. The coffee? Counter-surveillance." Harold felt both relieved and afraid. Relieved that he hadn't imagined it. Afraid because imagining it would have been safer. Russo did not promise arrests. He did not offer praise. He asked one question. "Would you be willing to keep watching?" Harold thought of Ellen. Thought of the airliner on the news. Thought of the quiet confidence with which customer 47 folded that paper. "Yes," he said. Russo slid a card across the table. A number. No name. "Call if anything changes." Harold left the building lighter and heavier at the same time. He had crossed a line. There was no going back to simply greeting customers. Nothing about Harold's job changed on the surface. He still stood near the entrance. Still smiled. Still asked how people were doing. But underneath, everything was different. Special Agent Russo never called. He didn't need to. The absence of contact meant Harold was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Observe, not interfere. The rules were simple. No staring. No following. No notes taken in public. Memory only. That suited Harold just fine. Customer 47 returned on schedule. This time Monday, 10:33 a.m. He wore a navy windbreaker. The glasses were the same. The basket again. Harold noticed the faint hesitation at the entrance, the quick check of the reflections, the relaxed shoulders once he confirmed the store looked ordinary. The purchases were nearly identical. Duct tape, envelopes, rubbing alcohol, newspaper, but the batteries were gone. Patterns tighten before they break. The man stayed 14 minutes at the snack bar, folded the paper, left. 7 minutes later, shorter interval, the runner arrived. Different shoes. Same gait. This time, the second man didn't leave immediately. He ordered a bottle of water. Saturday. Waited. Only when a third customer entered the snack area did he pick up the newspaper and walk out. That adjustment unsettled Harold more than anything so far. It meant someone else had noticed something, or feared that someone might. Harold called Russo from a payphone after his shift. He didn't embellish. He didn't speculate. He listed facts. Russo listened. "Good," he said. "Keep doing exactly what you're doing." By the 8th visit, the store felt staged. Harold sensed eyes that were not there before. Men pretending to browse hardware. A woman lingering near the registers without purchasing anything. Federal presence, deliberately dull. Customer 47 sensed it too. He lingered less. Adjusted posture. His coffee went untouched. On the 9th visit, the newspaper exchange didn't happen. Customer 47 folded the paper, then unfolded it. He left with it under his arm. The runner never appeared. That was the moment Harold understood the risk. Someone, somewhere, had felt the air change. And when spies feel watched, they do not simply disappear. They act. The 10th visit did not follow the pattern. That was the first warning. Customer 47 arrived early, 9:42 a.m., nearly 40 minutes ahead of his established window. Harold noticed immediately. Patterns could flex, but they never bent that far without reason. The man looked thinner. Not physically, tighter. His movements were economical, his eyes more active. He did not glance at the door reflection this time. He scanned the store directly. That was new. The basket was lighter. No duct tape. No envelopes. No alcohol. Just a newspaper. Customer 47 paid in cash. Another deviation. He went to the snack bar, but did not sit. He placed the newspaper flat on the table, folded it once, and left after less than 2 minutes. Harold felt a cold certainty settle in. This was not a drop. It was a test. 7 minutes passed. No runner. 10 minutes. Still nothing. Harold's pulse thudded steadily, but he did not move. He greeted a woman returning a toaster. Help a man find light bulbs. Acted normal, because normal was the camouflage. At minute 12, a young couple entered and sat at the snack bar. The newspaper remained untouched. At minute 15, a man in a gray jacket approached the table, hesitated, then walked past. He did not pick it up. Customer 47 had aborted the exchange. Harold phoned Russo after his shift, voice low and precise. Russo did not respond with reassurance. "That's confirmation," he said. "We'll handle the rest." 2 days later, customer 47 returned. But this time he was not alone. Harold did not know how he knew, only that he did. The store felt crowded in the wrong way. Ordinary faces. Unordinary stillness. Customer 47 moved through the aisles faster than ever before, grabbed random items, abandoned them at the register, and left without purchasing anything. Harold never saw the runner again. He did, however, see something else. A man in a plain jacket, hands in pockets, nodded once at Harold as he exited. A silent thank you. That evening, the news ran a brief segment. 4 arrests. Espionage. No details. Harold recognized none of the names. He didn't need to. The arrests did not bring relief. They brought silence. Customer 47 never returned. The snack bar table stayed empty in the late mornings. The runner vanished as completely as if he had never existed. The routines that had once felt ominous now left behind an absence that was harder to carry. Harold kept working. He greeted customers, checked receipts, smiled at children tugging on their parents' hands. From the outside, nothing about him suggested he had helped dismantle a foreign intelligence operation. Inside, he felt older. Special Agent Russo called once. Not with details. Not with praise. "It's done," he said. "You did exactly what we needed." Harold asked what would happen to the people involved. Russo paused before answering. "The Americans will go to prison," he said. "The others will leave the country." That answer followed Harold home. He thought about the runner. Young, fit, efficient. He thought about customer 47's steady hands and careful habits. He wondered how long they had lived inside those patterns, how many meals and mornings had passed unnoticed before a Walmart greeter disrupted them. He thought about the families who would now be receiving phone calls, explanations that would never feel complete. Espionage, he realized, did not end with arrests. It radiated outward. Weeks later, Harold was asked to visit a federal building again. Not the same one. Smaller. Quieter. This time, he was not kept waiting. Russo introduced him to 2 others. No last names. No ranks. Just professionals who treated him with an unexpected seriousness. They showed him nothing classified. They did explain impact. Documents compromised. Assessments rewritten. Operations altered. People overseas relocated quietly. Lives bent out of shape so they would not break. Harold declined the envelope offered to him. He did not ask what was inside. He accepted only one thing, an assurance that his name would never appear anywhere. He wanted to go back to being invisible. The Cold War ended years later, but that autumn stayed with him. He watched the Berlin Wall fall on television and felt a private, unspoken connection to the idea of hidden systems collapsing when pressure was applied in the right place. He continued greeting customers and watching. Time smoothed the edges, but it never erased them. The store changed. The snack bar was remodeled. Tables moved. New employees came and went without knowing what had once passed between those walls. Harold stayed through it all. The same blue vest, the same measured kindness. No one ever asked him about that fall. That was the point. Occasionally, he noticed men who almost reminded him of customer 47. The posture, the restraint, but they were never the same. He had learned the difference between resemblance and repetition. Patterns mattered more than faces. Years passed. The Cold War ended not with a single moment, but with a long exhale. Flags came down. Maps were redrawn. Headlines changed. Harold watched it happen from his living room. Ellen's photograph still on the side table, her quiet smile unchanged. He wondered if the men he had helped expose watched those same broadcasts from prison cells or distant apartments under different names. He wondered if they felt relief. In 1994, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single page. Carefully worded. Official but restrained. It thanked him for assistance provided years earlier and acknowledged that his observations had prevented further damage to national security. No operation name. No specifics. Just recognition. Harold framed it and hung it beside his postal retirement plaque. Not because he wanted to remember what he had done, but because it reminded him that paying attention still mattered. He worked until he was 90. On his final day, customers shook his hand. Management gave him a cake. Someone joked that the door wouldn't open the same way without him standing there. None of them knew how true that was. Harold Jennings died quietly, the way he had lived. No headlines marked it. No public acknowledgments followed. His obituary described him as a retired postal worker, a devoted husband, and a longtime Walmart greeter known for remembering faces and names. All of it was true. None of it was complete. At his funeral, a man stood near the back, hands folded, posture unmistakably practiced. He did not speak. He did not linger. Only a few people noticed him at all. That was intentional. Years later, long after files had been archived and careers had ended, Harold's role became a case study. Anonymized, stripped of personal detail, used to teach something deceptively simple. That counterintelligence does not begin with technology. It begins with attention. The men Harold noticed were not careless. They followed rules refined over decades. They trusted routine. They trusted invisibility. They trusted that no one would look closely at something as unremarkable as a retail snack bar. They were wrong. Harold had no training, no clearance, no ambition to be involved in espionage. He had grief. He had time. And he had a lifetime of quietly developed skills that taught him when something didn't fit. That is what ended the operation. Not a raid. Not a wiretap. Not a dramatic confrontation. A pattern noticed by someone who refused to ignore it. September 18th, 1983. A humid Tuesday morning in Alexandria, Virginia. Martha Henderson, like any ordinary shopper, pushed her cart through the automatic doors of the newly opened Walmart on Richmond Highway. The store was bustling, the hum of fluorescent lights above mingling with the distant chatter of shoppers and the clinking of coins at the checkout counters. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place. But that day, something invisible passed between people in the aisles, something that most wouldn't even notice until years later. Martha paused in front of the cereal section. A man, tall, in a faded brown jacket, was standing a few feet away, pretending to read the labels but glancing at her almost every few seconds. She didn't know it yet, but he wasn't there for groceries. The Cold War was still in full swing. Secrets weren't just in government files. They moved quietly through the streets in subtle glances, coded conversations, and ordinary places no one ever suspected. By lunchtime, something had shifted in that Walmart. A routine shopping trip became a silent test. A test of awareness, trust, and human instinct. By the evening, authorities quietly arrived. Not everyone saw them. Not everyone would understand why. But one thing was certain. One ordinary Tuesday morning had revealed something extraordinary about ordinary people and about the invisible networks around them. Martha Henderson left Walmart that day thinking she had done nothing more than complete her weekly grocery run. Yet, unknowingly, she had become part of an event that would later be examined by intelligence agencies. A seemingly small decision, noticing a subtle pattern, choosing to ask one question, observing one stranger, had created a ripple. That ripple led to uncovering activities no ordinary citizen ever imagines. Some people noticed the man, some didn't. Some thought he was a harmless shopper. Some felt a subtle unease they couldn't explain. The difference between these reactions was astonishing, and it is a lesson about human perception and intuition. Think about it. How often do we walk through our daily lives, surrounded by people and moments we barely notice, while history quietly unfolds around us? How many times has a small observation, a fleeting thought, or a moment of intuition saved someone, or perhaps even altered the course of events? I want you to stop for a second and answer these questions. Don't overthink. Just your gut response. When was the last time you felt someone was watching you, but you didn't know why? What did you do in that moment? Have you ever experienced a situation where you noticed something off, but ignored it? Looking back, do you regret it? Imagine you were Martha Henderson. You saw a stranger acting suspiciously in the aisle. Would you confront them, alert someone, or ignore it? Why? In ordinary places, grocery stores, cafes, subways, how often do you think critical events go unnoticed? Why do humans tend to ignore subtle cues? If you were part of an invisible network of observation, how would you recognize the signals? Could your intuition be trained to notice them? Now here's the twist. You're reading this from your phone or computer, probably in your own city. But think carefully. How much of your daily environment do you truly notice? How often do you follow your instincts instead of routine patterns? I want to see if you are aware. Scroll up. Look around your room or street. Look at the people passing by, the things you normally ignore. Then comment below. Tell me the city you're in. Why? Because the simple act of acknowledging your environment is the first step to noticing the unseen patterns around you. Martha Henderson didn't know she was part of history that day. But you, right now, can start observing, questioning, and reflecting. Your city name isn't just a word. It's proof that you are aware enough to pay attention, to participate in a story larger than yourself. Thousands may read this post and scroll past, but only those who engage will test their perception. Only those who respond will feel the quiet thrill of recognition that Martha felt that Tuesday. If this story made you pause, if it made you reconsider the power of ordinary awareness, share your thoughts below. These stories survive because people care enough to pass them on. Subscribe if you want more history like this, quiet, human, and real. Sometimes, history doesn't happen in meeting rooms or battlefields. Sometimes it happens next to a coffee cup and a folded newspaper.